Hi, I want to look into how our brain works or how our mind works. And the reason for this is that depending upon how we go deeper in our consciousness, meaning not jumping ahead with the logic, but rather to make sure that we are covering the whole angle, so to speak, we come out with different answer to the same question. So instead of grabbing something to do, stop and wait and see. One example I just thought may be interesting, at least for me, is that when you forget something, where you placed your glasses or iPhone, whatever, you look around and you cannot find it. Then you look around more and you cannot find it. Then you start to think about where you are, and you may find it or you may not find it, and then you have to ask more. So every step of the way of asking where the iPhone is, or mobile phone, whatever, it gets kind of like deeper into your memory structure, storage, to scan what could be. And we may use the logic or intuition to search for it. And more you cannot find, you go deeper and deeper. And eventually you may find and you said, aha. And that moment of aha, to me, is very similar to awakening, inside generation. So more we have access to that, I call it core being of who we are, into unconscious even, you have more chance to discover the solution. And to me, that is like AI going inside the deep learning instead of a shallow learning, using the information just available and play the best of what you can, but rather to synthesize ideas scattered and left out somewhere to make sense out of it. So if that is the way of thinking deeply, what is critical is to have time to be calm and quiet. Because if you're rushing, you cannot do that. What's the other thing interesting is that when you are accomplished in certain skill, this process get worked out much faster. If you are at the beginner level, meditation, learning, surfing, or certain jobs, you get confused because it's a new thing and you don't know how things happen. So there's a way of teaching how the job should be done. And I wrote books about those things and how to communicate until they learn it. So there's a human interaction in the process, but if there's no human interaction, that could be happening with the AI or by yourself, just being what I call in the Samadhi, calm and quiet mind state. More important the subject is, typically not easy to grasp the answer intuitively, so you have to spend time. So whether you call it meditation or not, or samadhi, just having a calm and quiet mind and being in the now and no self, no mind, that is like gathering all the possible information available within yourself. You can do externally, but for the sake of discussion, let's go the structure into ourselves. So what I said is that depending upon the interest level, the needs, we play with this brain structure in a different way. At the, I call it higher level, is the mind and brain using the logic and word. And lower into it, I call it heart, is when even the logic and word cannot reach out. But there are memories that you may have it in image or whatever experience you may have had when you are little or whenever it happened, which may not be easy to retrieve, but it's out there. There's a scientist, let's see if I can remember, I think he was the English guy, who played with this electrode on the brain, and when you touch certain neuron area, whatever you call it, then this person remembers exactly what the situation is as if he was living in that moment. But that point may not be accessed logically easily, but by the stimulation of this electrode, that happens. I think he got the Nobel Prize. If I remember back, I'll get back and explain in the description. So those are the unknown, some may call it the treasure storage area. I think in the Indian, their dhyana, the meditation process, talk about certain symptom that is happening, although we may not realize that because they studied a lot about the construct of who we are. And the meditation came out of that process, I'm pretty sure. So what's the implication of this in us to live life? I like to call it a middle way. Why I call it the middle way? Because it's not the surface, it's more deeper, but not all the way to the core of your being, but it's somewhere in between, that you may play this like a search and pick, the game you do to find the solution of your concern by retrieving the information from the memory space. And it can be shallow, it can be deeper, and if you go all the way to the depth of it, you may have a totally different experience because it's beyond the reach of your mind. But typically living in life, you are not a Zen monk sitting in the mountain, which you may want to do, but most people don't do that. So they may go deeper, but you may be somewhere. And you may see some people are much shallower and some are deeper. You may also see yourself and others shallower, deeper, depending upon the area of your interest. So what does that mean? It is part of your knowing yourself and start to look into that space which may not have happened to you until you heard about this story now. You may have heard the story in a different way and you knew it, but I may be just verbalizing it so that I can communicate possibly, and also communicating with myself to see where I am, what I do, and when I'm talking, what level I'm talking at. And more mastered the subject is, it becomes more natural, but the subject is more difficult and it requires some grammatical or word configuration and putting things together in a smooth manner so that people understand. I may have a difficulty to do that. But our mind and body is flexible enough, depending on the needs, we may be able to adjust with a certain level of awareness, training, and working out to get deeper if necessary. But in certain level, you may say, okay, this is beyond my expertise and just cut it out. So given that, I guess where I'm getting at is that about our narrow-mindedness and hasty action, intuitive and not thinking enough. If I look back my life, I can see that more time I'm calm and quiet and not rushing, I have much better sense of making a decision and me be more comfortable. On the other hand, especially when you're young and curious so many things, you want to try this, try that, and you just want to experience and maybe accumulating all the experience base, which may be necessary. So you may be in a different space. But over time, you're going to grow up, get older, and you may know which is more suited than not in the other area, and how deep you want to get into it. So that trajectory of life, of where to go, how much you go, and how deep, and all that, have to be experienced and felt by each individual. And out of that is the connection to what you feel very resonating from the core of your being. Like a resonating meaning connection from the brain to the heart. That's the way I look at it. So, or conscious to unconscious. And more you have that flow structure and less a bottleneck to access the important source of information, more you may be equipped to address the subject. So those kind of things, I would say, is what we are getting at when we talk about spirituality or religion or psychological issues related to trauma and habitual pattern, how to quit smoking or drug, all relate to the habitual pattern and how the structure of our being is providing or not providing the access to the key information for us to live well. So this may be very scientific or conceptual and it sounds like bullshit. Maybe it is bullshit. And it's part of the category, thrown into the bullshit category. But my finding at this age, almost 77 years old, is that once we know that structure and what we're doing, we know when to do what and how and why, all that kind of stuff. And that helps us to live better, hopefully to communicate better, but choose the game, so to speak, not to go where it's dangerous, but rather more familiar to you. Hopefully that meet your needs and the desire, but also to meet the way of the society. So I use the word middle way. Let me just summarize it by saying that middle way is not just here or just in the heart, and understanding of the structure and the process and finding the optimum way, like driving a car. Not too much this way, not too much this way, not too much acceleration, or not too slow. And that's the journey of life. And because of the environment changes and you yourself is changing, because your habitual pattern can change, we need to be attentive. And I think that's the awareness or the idea that we may pursue in studying who we are, what we do, why we do, what can be done better, how to learn the lesson, not repeat the mistake, and live every day happy life. We can do this in Samadhi every day to stop and to let the process to work out within the construct of who we are, so that we can detect the bottleneck or area of focus, so that we can keep moving forward with this idea as a principle. Thank you.